What's up, chess friends? It's Grandmaster Max Illingworth here, and my question for you is, do you hear about people talk about the power of the bishop pair, or the bishop pair wins the game by itself, or the bishop pair is the best chess advantage you can have? Well, let me show you how to belt the bishop pair and show those bishops who's boss. This game is a really brilliant one of the best games of the famous 1972 Cold War World Chess Championship match between Bobby Fischer, playing with the black pieces here, against the reigning world champion Boris Spassky. This was game number 5, set the tone for the whole match, so let's get into it. The game was a Nimzo-Indian with d4, knight f6, c4, e6. Nowadays the top GMs are so terrified of the Nimzo-Indian that they avoid it with knight f3, but Spassky was a man who said, "I'm not afraid of your opening," and he played knight c3, bishop b4, and okay, he decided to play knight f3 at this point rather than one of the other main lines. Fischer continued with c5, going after the pawn from the side, and then after e3, well, Fischer continued with knight to c6, going for the dark squared strategy. You know, when you play the Nimzo, you have the light side going for your queenside fianchetto or d5, and then you have the dark side going for c5 and going for the dark squared approach. Well, in any case, I have gone for both. Sometimes I even try to combine the two, but usually it's better just to stick with one. In any case, the game continued with bishop d3, and this is where Fischer showed a very cool idea, realizing, well, you know what, I don't have to wait for you to play a3 in order to double your pawns. I'm going to do it voluntarily. And at this point, there were absolute gasps of shock and horror in the press room saying, how could Bobby Fischer make the beginner's mistake of giving the bishop pair? Every grandmaster knows the bishop pair is a decisive advantage that wins games by himself. But as we will see, there was more to this story than that. Now, actually, I have some really cool files that I'm going to share with some of my top students as well on what to do if white plays move like castles. But for now, let's see this historical game to understand why this Hubner Nimzo-Indian, as it's called, is a powerful weapon that can confuse even the most experienced of chess players, indeed even a world champion. Spassky decided to take the center directly with e4. Fischer played e5 to stop white playing e5 himself. And we can see how these pawns do a good job of pulling the blot on the unopposed c1 bishop. White grabs some space with d5. And where do you think the knight moved to in this position? Now, some of you might be wanting to take knight a little detour via a5, but the problem is that that pawn is not really coming under any pressure here. So instead, it's better to bring the knight to e7 and bring it over to the king side. And Spassky, realizing this, said, no, I'm not going to let you do that. I'm going to play knight h4 and go for stuff like bishop g5, knight f5, f4. Just create a lot of options. And Fischer, in turn, played the move h6 with the idea that now, well, basically you want to go g5 and give that knight a little kick, show it who's boss. Well, Spassky continued with the move f4. And now you might be wondering, well, what's this Spassky guy doing? I mean, surely you just take, and then after captures, you win a piece with g5, right? But this is where Spassky could have shown his brilliance if Fischer had fallen into this very malevolent trap by playing the move of e5, a powerful counter strike hitting that knight on f6. Because now if you take, you go bishop takes, and that knight is suddenly coming under all kinds of fire. But if black goes knight g4 instead, white then hits with e6, uncovering an attack on the knight by cutting off the communication of the bishop. And even though white would be a piece down here, the attack is so monstrous that we can be sure that Spassky would have put away Fischer. For example, a move like gh4, you can even play bishop d2, a deadly quiet move, where if that knight tries to run away, we just cash in with e takes and win the house. But if fe6, rook f6, white has a monster attack. Queen h5 is coming, the rook's coming in the attack, and black's pieces are virtually all set up for the next game. So that was Spassky's big idea, thinking, oh, Fischer's going to fall for it. He's going to take the piece, and I'm going to get another quick win. Almost sees that forfeit win in game 2. But Fischer actually had anticipated this and came up with the brilliant concept of knight to g6. Now, at the time, this was a novelty. So a novelty is a move that's never been played before, and Fischer had prepared his special novelty for Spassky. After takes and takes, this is where Spassky decided to be a little bit too much like Luke Skywalker and start to go capturing everything and attacking everything. Nowadays, what strong players do is they play castles. And then after castles, say, take it nice and slow. You do a little massage of the position where move like h3, keeping the option of whether to play fe5 or indeed maybe to keep the tension a bit longer. Trying to improve the position with some developing moves. But Spassky decided to go right in with the move fe5. And maybe he was getting very excited saying, hey, look at me, I've got a protected pass pawn, I've got the bishop pair, the game is going to win itself from now, using some good old Soviet technique that Fischer, being born in the US, did not have access to. Well, it turned out Fischer did indeed read the 64 Russian chess magazines, and, well, he knew that after bishop e3 and b6 that neither of these bishops are doing that much, because the bishop pair to really show their power, you need to open up the position. I mean, if we could do a little magic trick, distract the opponent's attention, and then whip those pawns right off the board, well, then that bishop pair would be so powerful in that open position. But here it's all locked up. The bishops are all locked up in the prison of their own pawns, ironically. Well, the game continued castles. And then after a4, White said, I want to try and open up the position with a5, try to create a weakness in Black's formation. And here Fischer played another move that absolutely stunned the commentators, where even the seconds had to, stop and blink and say, wait, did Fischer really do that move? Well, it turns out he did. He realized that the best way to attack a weakness is to first fix that weakness in place, make sure it's not going anywhere, make sure they're all tied up, hands behind the back, and then to attack them with everything you've got. So after a5, unfortunately it's not a fair fight for White anymore, because now that pawn on a4 is fixed in place of weakness. Spassky said, you weakened your b6 pawn, you're creating all sorts of weaknesses, and Fischer's like, what weaknesses? I'm going to hit your guy here. I can protect my pawn easily enough. Rook b2, rook b8, and it leaves the question of, okay, what's White's constructive idea in this position? By the way, more aggressive players might have gone knight g4 and tried to kick the bishop around. But Fischer said, you know what, if we give Spassky enough rope, he's going to hang himself. And that's actually what happened in the game, where after rook bf2, which is actually a mistake, by the way, White really, I think, should play a move like maybe even... It looks really weird, but I was even thinking of a move like bishop e2, where you kind of try to debate them into taking the pawn, because if Black were to take, which is probably not the right move, by the way, but just so you understand the trap, after takes and takes, White can then play queen c2, and suddenly we have a little skewer on our hands. Bishop f5 runs into g4, which overloads the defending bishop, and suddenly Black will be crying a little bit here. But instead, Spassky said, well, I'm going to try and switch over with rook bf2, but that knight is perfectly well defended, you see. And after queen e7, Fischer had connected his rooks and was fully in the middle game, while White was still trying to figure out where it all went wrong. After bishop to c2, again, it's very tempting to go knight g4, because keep in mind that if the rooks all get traded, then Black has one more piece to attack e4 than White has to defend it, and that's something we're going to see come up in the game. Fischer decided to massage the advantage a little bit with g5, saying, I have all the time in the world, let Spassky stew in his own juices a little bit and keep on panicking himself into a mistake. So after the move bishop d2, again the computer wants to try to put a piece on g4, but Fischer was a little bit ahead of the computer, playing the move queen e8, a nice little multi-purpose move to not only hit this pawn and tie up these queen and bishop to defensive duty, but also the idea is that after the move bishop e1 that was played, that Black can now go queen to g6 and hit this pawn on e4 with the queen. Again, computer likes it, they're going g4 and, just taking even more space from the white pieces, but okay, we can't blame Fischer for not finding every single move that the computer played. I mean, it would be cheating if he played every soft Fischer's move every time here. Well, White could play a move like queen f3, but he was a bit nervous about the queen being opposite the rook, and that's, I guess, why he played queen d3, but it's an inferior move. Black played the move knight h5, realizing that, he can kind of play around the white pawns, and that the trade of the rooks is kind of in Black's best interest anyway, because again, the more of these pieces that you trade, the more easy it's going to be to try to win that pawn on e4 directly, because again, this bishop can't defend it, but the black knight can certainly attack the pawn, being able to move on both color complexes. I mean, if you think about with the bishop pair, the bishop pair basically, the reason it's often considered an advantage is because it gives you control over both color complexes in theory. But if you also think about it from the other perspective, here Black has two pieces that can fight on the light squares, and whereas white has only one of the bishops that can fight on the light squares. So it's sort of a way black has a light square advantage and white has a dark square advantage, but because black's position is just so solid and locked up, white just doesn't have a way to use that supposed dark squared advantage. Because the bishop pawns, well, you can see that black's actually following Capablanca's rule very well. Placing the pawns here, trade off the rooks, captures, so you see it easily. So black has placed the pawns so the bishop is just completely dominated by the black pawns here. In fact, I think the bishop is so bad that you could even consider a move like bishop d3. Try to saying to Fischer, you know that the bishop pair is a very powerful advantage, and I'm going to be a nice guy and give you the opportunity to take away my prized bishop pair and have a very solid grandmaster draw with black. But knowing Fischer, he would have said, nah, I'll go queen f6, go g4, just start doing a little pawn storm and, make that bishop look even more silly than it already does. But instead of that, we had the move bishop to d1. His bishop's been just behind these castle walls the whole game, and he's saying, you know what, I'm not just here to pray, I'm here to get some action, to get in the fight and prove my worth as a soldier to the Empire, or in this case to the USSR. This is what Spassky was representing. But it turned out his career was short-lived, because after the move knight f4, here white had to try to find some way to hold, a move like queen to e3 to defend the pawn. Although I still think the idea of trying to bring the bishop and queen around to attack this guy is going to be pretty nasty. Not to mention even queen e8 actually looks pretty unpleasant going after this weakness. Or if queen b1 is played, well, in that case black has many ways to improve the position. I kind of like the idea of clearing the way for g4 and just grabbing space on the king side. Maybe you can even get a fawn pawn on h3 and have dreams of queen to g2 mate. But instead, white played the move queen c2. And while Imagine Dragons hadn't been created at this stage, I'm sure that's what Spassky was imagining after Fischer's next move, as he had faced the demon of running into a decisive tactic. So what's the winner for black here, if you haven't seen it already? Okay, congratulations for playing it like Bobby Fischer. The move bishop a4, bam, hit the board, and Spassky found the best move in this position. He resigned here. Because the problem is that if you were to take that offered bishop with queen a4, well, then you have queen e4, and, well, we have checkmate here, or we have checkmate here, and white has no good way to avoid both of them as such. So there you have it. That's how to belt the bishop pair. All you have to do is play it like Bobby Fischer, tie up the board, lock up that pawn structure so you don't have a way to open it up for the bishops, and then what will happen then is you'll have one more piece on your color complex, which in this case was the light squares, whereas their bishop is just going to be around just hitting a brick wall saying, what were we supposed to do again? I didn't realize that we had this much time off work. In any case, I'm glad that you enjoyed this video. Do make sure to leave a like to show your appreciation. Leave your comments or your feedback to help the others to learn as well a few little tricks from this Grandmaster video. If you've been following my content for a while, then certainly consider subscribing to show your support and be updated with more and more of my chess training videos. Also have a special opportunity in the description link as well that you can check out. So with that being said, congratulations on completing this lesson. Pleasure as always to serve you with my chess knowledge and help you to make 2021 the best chess year of your life. Or if you're watching this after 2021, with a current year, 2150 or whatever it is. In any case, I will see you in the next video, dear YouTube followers. So have a good one.